If you've lived in Alabama for a long time, there are towns across this state that once had full communities and are now completely gone. Families lived there for generations, and then something happened that forced them to leave. These are 13 abandoned towns in Alabama, and number 1 will stop you cold. Number 13, Blakeley, Baldwin County. In 1820, Blakeley was bigger than Mobile, one of the largest cities in the state. Josiah Blakeley, an entrepreneur from Connecticut, founded the town in 1814 on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay with a clear commercial strategy. The location offered a deep natural port that large ships could access even when the sandbar blocking Mobile's channel shut that city down. Within a few years, Blakeley had a bank, 3 hotels, a weekly newspaper called the Blakeley Sun, and active shipyards launching some of the finest steamboats on the river. It looked like the future of the entire Gulf Coast. Then yellow fever arrived in the summer of 1822. It came back in 1826, again in 1828. The death toll was so severe the town buried its dead in shared graves. Nobody understood yet that the same lowland swamps of the Mobile Tensaw Delta that gave Blakeley its deep harbor were breeding disease year-round in the standing water. By the Civil War, Blakeley had fallen from 4,000 people to fewer than 100. The Confederacy built Fort Blakeley at the old town site, earthwork fortifications drawn around what was already a ghost town. On April 9, 1865, one of the last major battles of the entire Civil War was fought in those ruins. 16,000 Union soldiers attacked 3,500 Confederates who had dug in among the decaying streets of a city dead for 40 years. The soldiers at Blakeley did not know that Robert E. Lee had surrendered at Appomattox that same afternoon. The war was already over. Men were dying for ground that had been lost long before the first shot was ever fired. The earthworks are still there at historic Blakeley State Park. The shared graves sit alongside the headstones of Civil War soldiers. A city that once outgrew Mobile, now a trail through the trees. Number 12, Elleton, Jefferson County. Most people in Birmingham have no idea their city was built to replace another town, one that was thriving, until the wrong men decided it was in the way. Elleton was the county seat of Jefferson County from 1821 to 1873. 1,000 residents, a working courthouse, hotels, churches, schools, and coach roads fanning out in every direction. When the railroad reached Jones Valley in the 1860s, Elleton was positioned to become the industrial capital of the whole region. The men of the Elleton Land Company had other ideas. They had quietly purchased 1,400 acres of swampy farmland a few miles east, right at the junction of 2 major rail lines, and named their planned city Birmingham after England's great steel capital. All they needed was to move the county courthouse. In 1873, they held a referendum. To make sure they won, they ran free excursion trains to carry voters to the polls, hired bands to play in the streets, and threw a massive public barbecue for anyone who showed up on election day. The people ate the food, heard the music, and voted to move the county seat to Birmingham. Elleton emptied out within months. The town that had anchored Jefferson County for 50 years was gone inside a decade, absorbed into Birmingham in 1910 and erased from civic memory so thoroughly that most people living there today have never heard its name. Stand at the corner of Tuscaloosa Avenue and Center Street in Birmingham's West End right now. You are standing in the exact center of what was Elleton's main square. No marker, no plaque, no acknowledgement of any kind that this ground meant something before Birmingham arrived. Number 11, Fort Mims, Baldwin County. There is a reconstructed wooden fort on the Tensaw River in Baldwin County that most Alabamians have driven past 100 times without ever stopping. What happened inside it on one August afternoon in 1813 triggered a chain of events that permanently redrew the map of the American South. Fort Mims was a modest stockade, a wooden fence around a house and a few outbuildings, barely half an acre of enclosed space. In the summer of 1813, as tensions between settlers and the Red Stick faction of the Creek Nation reached a breaking point, nearly 600 men, women, and children crowded inside for protection. The Red Sticks attacked on August 30th. The battle lasted 5 brutal hours. When it was over, more than 500 people inside those walls were dead. the single largest loss of American civilian life to a Native American attack in United States history. News reached Andrew Jackson in Nashville within weeks. He organized an immediate military response. The resulting Creek War ended with the Treaty of Fort Jackson, forcing the Creek Nation to surrender 23 million acres, nearly half of what is now Alabama and Georgia. That dispossession led directly to the Trail of Tears. One afternoon at a half-acre stockade in Baldwin County started all of it. The fort has been reconstructed at the original site, and most people still drive right past it. If this kind of Alabama history matters to you, subscribe. We do this every week. Number 10. Ensley, Jefferson County. If you've ever driven west on I-20 through Birmingham, you've seen them. Blast furnaces north of the highway, massive and rusting, vines climbing the walls, smokestacks still reaching for a sky that no longer needs them. Most Birmingham residents have noticed those ruins their whole lives. Almost none know what stood there. In 1886, a Memphis entrepreneur named Enoch Ensley built an entirely new city on the western edge of Birmingham. The Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company poured workers and capital in, and within 2 decades, the Ensley Works had grown into one of the largest steel plants in the world. By 1910, 25,000 people lived in Ensley, whole neighborhoods of working families who built their lives around those furnaces and had every reason to believe those furnaces would outlast them. In 1939, a local musician named Erskine Hawkins wrote a song about the streetcar junction in the heart of Ensley. Glenn Miller recorded it. That song was Tuxedo Junction, written about this neighborhood, in this state, in this city that most of the country had never heard of. From coast to coast, people danced to it without knowing they were dancing to a Birmingham street corner. By the 1960s, cheaper imported steel was cutting into the market. The furnaces closed in 1975. The melt shop shut down in 1976. The last workers were transferred to a newer plant in Fairfield in 1980, and by 1984, the property had gone completely silent. The furnaces are still there on Birmingport Road. The buildings are still there, windows empty, floors cracked, vegetation reclaiming every surface. A city that armed 2 world wars and gave America Tuxedo Junction, left standing on the side of an interstate, unacknowledged for over 40 years. Number 9. Old St. Stephen's, Washington County. Most Alabamians have never heard the name St. Stephen's, and that is remarkable because for a few years in the early 1800s, it was the single most important place in the entire state. Old St. Stephen's sits on a limestone bluff above the Tombigbee River in Washington County, about 65 miles north of Mobile. It started as a Spanish fort, then became an American trading post on the frontier. Then the Creek War opened up the Alabama Territory, and the town exploded. By 1819, St. Stephen's had more than 500 homes, 20 stores, 2 hotels, a bank, a school, and a theater. The first bank chartered in Alabama was here, the first school, the first theater. In January 1818, the Alabama Territorial Assembly held its opening session at the Douglas Hotel on High Street, the meeting where the legal ground of the entire state of Alabama was first laid. Then Governor Bibb quietly arranged a free federal land grant for a new capital at Cahawba in Dallas County. When Alabama became a state in 1819, St. Stephen's lost its capital status overnight. Without the seat of government, the energy left fast. Yellow fever swept through in waves. A railroad built 2 miles inland pulled the next generation of settlers away from the bluff and toward a new depot town. By the 1850s, it was empty, 30 years from the foundation of Alabama to abandoned ruins. Today, it's an active archaeological site where excavations every summer pull up Spanish coins, frontier tools, and Native American materials going back thousands of years, the layered evidence of everything this bluff once was, still waiting in the ground. Number 8. Bellefonte, Jackson County. In Jackson County, there is a solitary brick chimney standing alone in an open field, the only remnant of a county seat that voted itself out of existence. 2 miles away sits a nuclear power plant that spent over $6 billion and never produced a single watt of electricity, both still standing. Nobody connects them, Bellefonte was the proud county seat of Jackson County, incorporated in 1821, a courthouse, a church, lawyers and doctors, and families who had been there since the earliest days of statehood. Nearly 400 residents who had every reason to believe their town had a long future ahead of it. Then in 1849, the railroad came to Jackson County. Would Bellefonte like the tracks to run through town? The leadership said no. Locomotives were loud, dirty, and beneath a community of their standing. So the depot went up 3 miles away on land donated by a man named Robert Scott. A settlement grew around it and took the name Scottsboro. Within years, Scottsboro was the new county seat, and Bellefonte, stripped of its courthouse and its commerce in a single move, had nothing left to offer. The post office closed, the courthouse went dark. The Civil War burned what remained. By 1880, Bellefonte had dropped off the census entirely. By the 1920s, it was gone. Today, that lone chimney and the old cemetery, headstones going back to 1826, are all that remain. 2 miles away, the Bellefonte Nuclear Generating Station sits unfinished and silent. TVA broke ground in 1974, spent more than $6 billion, and halted construction in 1988 with the reactors 88% complete. The plant was auctioned off in 2016 to a developer who swore he would finish it. He didn't. The town that refused the future, the power plant that never reached it. Same field, same county, same outcome. Number 7, Spectre, Elmore County. There is a ghost town on a private Alabama island that had no reason to exist in the first place, and it has drawn visitors from around the world ever since. It's called Spectre. Built from scratch in 2003 for Tim Burton's film Big Fish, a movie about a mythical Alabama town so perfect that nobody who discovered it ever wanted to leave. Burton's crew took over Jackson Lake Island, a remote 60-acre island on the Alabama River near Millbrook, and constructed an entire town, a white church at the end of the street, rows of houses and storefronts, and an entrance marked by 2 poles strung with dangling shoes, because in Spectre, you were never going home. When filming ended, the crew was supposed to tear everything down. The family that owned the island said no. Leave it standing. For years, almost nobody knew it was there. Then word spread, and fans started arriving from across the country and the world. One man drove from South Florida weeks after losing his 21-year-old son to cancer. They had watched Big Fish together during his son's final months. It had helped them find each other again. He needed to stand in that town one more time. Most of the original storefronts burned in a fire years ago. 7 structures still stand, weathered, wrapped in Spanish moss, slowly being pulled back into the Alabama bottomland. A small herd of goats roams the streets permanently, peering out from doorways, following every visitor down to the church at the end of the road. The shoes are still on the wire. Spectre never existed, but the grief and love it keeps pulling in from across the world are as real as anything on this list. Number 6, Claiborne, Monroe County. Claiborne was once the largest city in South Alabama. 5,000 people, cotton warehouses, steamboat landings, grand homes on the Alabama River in Monroe County. A city that genuinely competed with Mobile for regional dominance. Stand on that same ground today, and there is not a single original structure left. Not one wall, not one foundation stone. Nothing to show you that anyone was ever there. Claiborne began as a military post in 1813 and built its prosperity on King Cotton. Steamboats lined the docks. Families planted roots and built homes they expected to pass down for generations. Then yellow fever came. Then cholera. The epidemics tore through Claiborne repeatedly across the mid-1800s, killing hundreds and driving hundreds more away. Each wave left fewer people. When the post-war railroad was routed through Monroeville rather than Claiborne, the last reason to stay was gone. By 1872, the population had shrunk from 5,000 to 350. It didn't recover. 2 historic structures, a Masonic lodge and a mansion, were physically dismantled and moved to the nearby town of Purdue Hill just to keep them from disappearing entirely. Everything else is gone. One of the most consequential cities in South Alabama's history, and the ground where it stood gives no sign of it whatsoever. Number 5, Mooresville, Limestone County. Drive through Mooresville today and something feels immediately wrong. Not broken or abandoned, but stopped. Like a clock that someone wound and then forgot to let tick. Mooresville is Alabama's oldest incorporated town, chartered in 1818, one full year before Alabama even became a state. It sits in Limestone County in the Tennessee Valley, with perhaps 50 residents, original brick streets, and antebellum buildings that haven't been meaningfully altered in close to 2 centuries. In its prime, Mooresville was a stagecoach crossroads on the main road between Nashville and New Orleans. Merchants, craftsmen, travelers, and families who believed they were building something permanent. Andrew Jackson and James K. Polk both worshipped in the Methodist church that still stands on that corner today. The post office has operated from the same small brick building since 1840. The railroad came through Limestone County in the 1850s, a few miles north of Mooresville, not through it. The stagecoach routes closed, businesses followed the traffic to the tracks, families moved toward the new depot towns. Around 1850, Mooresville simply stopped growing, and nothing was ever torn down. Walk those original brick streets today. The church where 2 presidents prayed, the post office that has never closed, homes from the 1820s with people still living inside them. No traffic lights, no chain stores, not a single sign that anything outside these few blocks has changed at all. Mooresville didn't die. It just stopped one morning in 1850 and never started again. Number 4. Sugsville, Clark County. Sugsville was the seat of Clark County for 35 years. Courthouse, jail, law offices, doctors, merchants, a post office, a functioning center of county government, with families who had been building the town since before Alabama was a state. Then, the railroad survey results came back. The Mobile and Ohio line was going south of town, not through it. A new community called Grove Hill grew up at the depot instead. In 1866, Clark County moved its seat of government to Grove Hill, not because anything had failed in Sugsville, not because of any disaster or decline, but purely because the tracks had been laid somewhere else. That was enough. The courthouse was taken apart. The county's business followed the government south. Families who had built their lives around the commerce that a county seat brings packed up and moved. By the late 1800s, Sugsville was finished, not burned down, not flooded out, not emptied by disease, simply left behind by the cold arithmetic of the railroad age. When the train stops somewhere else, so does everything else. A cemetery with graves from the 1820s through the 1860s is all that marks the spot. The founding families of Clark County buried in a place that quietly outlasted the town they built. Number 3. Prairie Bluff, Wilcox County. Prairie Bluff appeared on maps the same year Alabama became a state, 1819, and was gone from them by 1900. That's one human lifetime. The entire existence of a town, start to finish, within the span of a single life. It was a cotton shipping settlement on the Alabama River in Wilcox County. A post office, a church, families working the same land their parents had cleared. Real people, sending children to school in the morning, sitting on the porch in the evenings, expecting the same steady future that people always expect when they've put down roots. The Civil War cut off the river cotton trade. Railroads reached other towns and bypassed this one. The young people drifted toward places with more opportunity. The post office closed. The families scattered. No flood, no fire, no single moment of catastrophe. Prairie Bluff simply ran out of reasons to exist and faded out without anyone writing it down. A small cemetery survives on the old river road with headstones from the 1820s through the 1860s. The names of families who built that town believing it would outlast them. It's the only proof that Prairie Bluff was ever real. Number 2. Vienna, Sumter County. There is a stretch of Sumter County along the Tombigbee River that barely appears on modern maps. In the 1840s, Vienna stood there, and everything about it felt like it was going to last. Cotton was the economy, and the river was the highway. Vienna had a deep natural steamboat landing positioned at the edge of the Black Belt plantation country, with Mobile at the other end of the waterway. Goods moved through Vienna. Families put down roots and built solid homes for children they expected to raise there. Then, in the 1850s, the Mobile and Ohio Railroad was surveyed through Sumter County. The line ran east of the river, not through Vienna. The cotton that had moved by boat started moving by rail, faster, cheaper, and without stopping at Vienna's dock. The landing went quiet. Merchants relocated toward the tracks. Families followed. The Civil War cut off the river trade entirely, and when it ended, there was nothing left to rebuild and no reason to try. Vienna faded without any single moment of disaster, no epidemic, no fire, no battle fought on its streets. Just the irreversible quiet that settles in when the economic reason a town exists picks up and moves somewhere else. No buildings remain. The Tombigbee eventually shifted course, and the old landing that once gave Vienna its whole identity disappeared into the floodplain. A town that existed entirely to move cotton erased the moment cotton found a faster road. Number 1. Old Cahawba, Dallas County. 8 miles west of Selma, where the Cahawba River meets the Alabama, Spanish moss hangs so thick in the old oaks that afternoon light comes through in long golden shafts. The original street grid is still there, running through grass and trees toward the water. Walk it slowly, and you'd almost convince yourself this place still had people. What happened here is the most layered story in Alabama history. In 1819, Alabama needed a capital. Governor Bibb arranged a free federal land grant at this river confluence, on a site that archaeologists would later confirm had been inhabited for 4,000 years. Alabama's first state capitol was constructed directly on top of a 30-foot Native American ceremonial mound. By 1820, Cahawba was a working capital. By 1826, it was finished as one. The same rivers that gave it strategic value flooded it, severely, repeatedly, dangerously. The legislature voted to move the capital to Tuscaloosa. Cahawba refused to disappear. The river access that drove politicians away was perfect for cotton. Through the 1840s and 1850s, Cahawba reinvented itself. Greek revival mansions, gaslit storefronts, steamboats at the bluff stacked high with bales. By 1860, Dallas County was the 4th wealthiest county per capita in the entire United States. Then the Civil War arrived. The Confederacy seized Cahawba's railroad and stripped the rails for use elsewhere. Trade collapsed overnight. The old cotton warehouse in the center of town was converted into Castle Morgan, a Confederate holding facility for captured Union soldiers. It was built for 500. By 1864, it held more than 3,000. Flooding, overcrowding, and disease made conditions inside devastating. When the prisoners were released in March 1865 and transported to Vicksburg, roughly 1,000 of the Castle Morgan survivors boarded a steamboat called the Sultana on April 24th. 2 days later, the Sultana's boilers failed catastrophically on the Mississippi River. Approximately 1,800 people lost their lives, the deadliest maritime disaster in American history. Most of the victims were men who had just survived Cahawba. After the war, Cahawba's white residents followed the county seat to Selma, but formerly enslaved people moved in, bought property, built churches, organized politically in the abandoned courthouse. Selma newspapers called Cahawba the Mecca of the radical Republican Party. One of those residents, Jeremiah Harrelson, had been born into slavery. He became the only person in Alabama history to serve in the State House, the State Senate, and the United States Congress. Reconstruction ended. The floods kept coming. By 1900, the last residents were gone. Cahawba remained legally a town in the state of Alabama until May 9, 1989, 170 years after it was founded. The last person known to have actually lived there was a formerly enslaved man named Jack McPherson, who stayed on as the town's unofficial caretaker. He died in 1905. Archaeologists have worked the site since 1993 and believe less than 15% of what is buried there has been found. In 2019, ground radar located a burial ground with 215 unmarked graves, established in July 1819, the same month the first enslaved workers arrived to build Alabama's state capitol. The brick columns of the Crocheron Mansion still stand along the Cahawba River. The artesian well still flows. The original streets still run through the Spanish moss toward the water. A capital, a cotton empire, a prison, a freedmen's town, a ghost town. And somewhere under that Alabama soil, 85% of its story still waiting to be told. Drop a comment and tell me what state you're watching from. I read every single comment. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.